really important for us to overcome imposter syndrome or self-sabotage. It's essential for us to be in these pivotal roles in our community to really establish change. And in order for us to do that, we have to be in those spaces and really know that we're meant to be there and we are not there for a tokenized reason, but we have value and we are important. In order for us to bring more individuals, especially Black women, along, we have to overcome those barriers and we have to continue to be in leadership roles and sit in those seats. My public health career really became a vision after two experiences. One, I knew I wanted to be in healthcare and I really wanted to help my community, but I didn't really know how. But I had this really big service mindset. So my mother used to work for the Urban League of Greater Cleveland, and I always used to volunteer, and that was kind of something that really was instilled in me at a young age. So that was where it really started to come from. I was always volunteering at health clinics. I was always really around providers, and I didn't really know how to be involved without actually being the provider. And public health was that opportunity. And then I really found a love and passion for it when I traveled to Ghana and studied abroad there. I really wanted to figure out how I can make a difference for large populations. And at first that was going to be globally. I really wanted to work for USAID. I thought I was going to really work abroad. And after my experience in Ghana, I realized that where I lived had some of those same experiences, like infant mortality. So I really became passionate about how to solve those issues in my own community. Many of the barriers are people just often doubting you and really having to support yourself, having family, having friends, having a village that supports you. But those barriers were things like people not thinking that extracurricular. I remember people telling me that my volunteer experience wasn't as important as my academic experience or how many papers I was able to publish. And knowing that those experiences are the reason why I'm in the roles I'm in today was really essential. Also, just life, right? While you're achieving graduate school or going through things, there may be family that becomes ill and personal reasons. So having to really persevere through all of those really came about. I think I actually realize I'm doing what I'm born to do every day. It really isn't one experience, but one day this week, I had the amazing opportunity to be on a phone call with 5 Black men talking about how we address blood pressure in barbershops in our community. And it just gave me so much joy. That was my first time being on a call with 5 Black men about men's health. And I was just really just honored to be a part of it and to be helping this happen across the state. And that really just re-energized me to keep going. Like, we are doing good work and experiences like that. And then the next call I had was with a whole bunch of Black women talking about infant mortality. So just being able to make a difference in the community, it's not just one experience, but I think all of the small experiences I'm able to have every day and able to change the health of our community. I think we often have to put ourselves higher on our to-do list. And that is actually one of my favorite quotes from Michelle Obama. I often have to tell it to myself. I'm often not listening to it. So it's like getting more sleep, making sure we are practicing self-care, making sure that we are eating healthy and providing our bodies with energy and healthy foods, making sure that we are moving consistently, even if we're at a standing desk, or finding ways to step while we're watching TV, whatever it may be, or line dancing, which is one of my favorites. And lastly, we have to stay socially connected. That is essential for us to really be our healthy selves, and how we do that in this time may be a little bit difficult, but really practicing those 5 energy drivers are really essential to our health.
When we're talking about self-sabotage and imposter syndrome, I think one of the most important things is to recognize that you're worthy and know that you're worthy. And I think, a lot of times, at least I'm going to say personally for me, one of the reasons why I maybe not have felt that way the most was because I was so busy trying to do what other people expected of me to do. And I wasn't really walking in the way that I should, as well as, you hear the stories from I was raised by my grandmother, And she said to me, you know, you got to be 10 times better. I remember going off to college, and that's what she told me. And I was going to a HBCU at the time before I transferred back home. And she just told me, you got to be 10 times better than everyone else. And I think when you're doing that and you're so busy trying to do what everybody expects you to do and be 10 times better, you start to doubt yourself and your own gifts. And so what I would tell people, just to know you're worthy and just to walk in what you know is true to yourself. For me, from what pushed me to walk in my purpose was that I unfortunately left employment for this organization. And because it was happening so unceremoniously, I didn't have any inclination this was going to happen. And I went home and I was in tears and I was praying. And the sad thing is I didn't even like the job that I was doing because I was so tired and getting so sickly from it. But it was still, sometimes we determine that our job is what makes us. But it was then when I just started truly, truly seeking God's face and trying to restore the faith that I was losing, that I decided to do what I've always loved to do, which is talking, which is developing workshops and all those types of things. My own self-doubt, I think, was the biggest thing that I faced, because like as a kid, I would hear things from people that wasn't the nicest that you would hear. And I think sometimes people don't realize that we have to be mindful of what we speak into children. And then I think one of the other barriers that it just came to me is the barrier that because I'm a caregiver, I take care of my mom and my brother. My brother is autistic. And then I became a parent because my aunt and uncle passed away. And so I took on there too. And even though they're over 18, it doesn't feel like the parenting ends. It just takes on another level. And so my own self-doubt, and because geographically in the area that I was in, I can't do what I want to do as far as leaving. So that is what kind of was my barrier. And so I had to look at, okay, this is where I am. How do I make this work? And once I started doing that, I saw myself slowly starting to make some headway. When you can wake up and you don't mind getting up and doing what you're doing, you're not waiting for the weekend to come. I spent too many years waiting for the weekend to come and not understanding why. And once I started to just get excited by what I was doing, I knew then that this is what that this time in my life was what I'm born to do. For me, I will say that, again, they've now changed it. You say you only got one life to live, or you only live, blah, 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 whatever that is. Well, we live each day. And we live each day, but we get just one life, which is a gift. And the one thing that I, again, wish I would have been, if I knew this in my 20s, regardless of what you do, people are going to have something to say about you or comment on what you do. So if that's going to be the case, then what better way is to walk and do what you want to do in the first place? Because you're going to get feedback regardless. So if you know that you're walking in what you're supposed to do, I think that understanding that and listening to that voice inside and trusting that voice inside and knowing again that you're worthy and that you can trust yourself and having that support, a good support system, I think that will help you to really walk in what you want to do and even when you have, because we all get doubts every once in a while, be able to rebound from whatever doubts that you have.
And imposter syndrome, it's interesting because we've felt these things for a long time, but this term, is sort of a newer term. So, this feeling of not being enough or, feeling like, what I'll tell you is that so many people have said to me, you are this and you are that, and you're so great at this, and you're so great at that. And you question yourself, that self-doubt. And so I think it's important, one of the number one things as we work through that, because I think that that's not something you just come to. I think that it really is something that evolves and progresses as you grow and you develop. And so I think it's important that we really get to know ourselves, because so often, especially now on social media and in life, we're looking for someone else to validate us and to tell us we're enough and to tell us the work that we do is enough. And so the way that we can combat that is to get to know ourselves on our own. And when you know who you are outside of any position or outside of any role that you play, then that begins to diminish because you know who you are, you know that you're worthy, and you know what you're capable of. What I know for sure, what I have learned is that it is imperative for us to get outside of our comfort zone, and that can be very challenging. So what happened was I was very comfortable in a position somewhere. I was working at a college, and I was comfortable for a while. And then I began to get very uncomfortable, and there were things happening at that place that just didn't align with my leadership style, my leadership skills, or me as a person, based on some other leadership. And I didn't move. I wouldn't move. But I believe that God moved me, right? And so he was like, oh, you a little comfortable. Let me get you uncomfortable. And sometimes we will stay in a place that we know is not good for us because we're comfortable or we feel like that's what we can do, and we can't move outside of that. And so I had to be moved because I wouldn't move. And once I was moved, it gives you that time to sit with and think about who you are and your why. Why am I here? And sometimes we're looking for this grand thing that we're supposed to be here to do something so grand, right? But when you really sit with it and you think about, where does my passion lie? What is it that my partner has said to me, what would you do for free? And whatever you would do for free, do that. And that is exactly what happened. I had to sit in some time that was unexpected and it wasn't comfortable, right? But our growth occurs when we are uncomfortable. That comfort zone is not where we grow. When we are uncomfortable, that's where the growth occurs. And that's where my passion lied. And that's where it led me to know this is where my skills, my knowledge, my experience lies, but also my passion. Even during my educational career of obtaining my doctoral degree, is sort of exactly what we were talking about with that imposter syndrome and feeling like I can't do this, or I'm not good enough to do this. And then, okay, I become doctor, and then what? Right? All of these things that play on you. And I think it's important that we stop and think about, where did that derive from, right? Where did I even start to begin to think that I'm not good enough, or that I can't do this? So, one of the things that pushed me and helped me is that my daughter was watching, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't give up and then tell her, when it's time for her to have a hard time, you can't give up. Well, no, I had to be that example. She watched me through the entire process. And so it was important for me to be that example for her, that it's hard and it's tough and you can push through. But also just recognizing in and of myself that I can do it. And it took work. It takes work to sit with yourself and sit with your stuff. It's not an easy thing to do, but to sit with my stuff and say, okay, I can do this. I can push through this, and I'm worthy, right? I'm worthy to be called doctor, to go do this work. I'm worthy. I know that I've been given this skill and talent to do this. I can do this. I can push myself. At the point that I wasn't looking forward to the paycheck, I wasn't, I get that excitement, nervousness, excitement, right? But that excitement that you're like, I love this, right? I can do this all the time, right? When I am standing in front of a group of people and I see the aha moments, it's something about it that does something to you, right? That's what sort of propels it for me, right? And just the enjoyment of it, just enjoying what I do, not waking up every day saying, here we go, I have to do this, I just have to do this to make it through. But really, I'm enjoying doing this. I'm doing what I'm called to do at this time, because I think it's always evolving. Number one is know who you are. You are more than a mother, a sister, whatever your position is, whatever role, a wife, who are you? If someone asks you who you are, can you tell them without identifying a role? Who are you? That's number one. So getting to know who you are. Number two, what is your why? not just what you're doing, but why you're doing it. Because if you know your why, that's where your passion lies. Why am I here? Who I am, because it's beyond all of those roles in which we're playing. Those are roles given to us for times, right? But that's not who we are. Who are you? And what is your why, right? And then the last thing is feel the fear and do it anyway. The fear is a very human thing. We are human before we are anything else. So the fear is what we all have. And for anyone to say that they're fearless and I would ask them to check themselves. We are human. We feel the fear, but the difference is those who feel the fear and they do it anyway. So feel the fear and do it anyway.
I think it is hugely important to realize your own potential. And inside of each and every one of us, there is a huge potential that lies within. It can be often conflicting to truly understand and find your true self and authentic self, but you have to find that first and then really believe no matter what you're said or told or what obstacles or barriers may come in front of you, that you continue to push forward to be that person that you know that you can and will be. So I was one of those people who oddly had some idea of what I wanted to do very early in life, since 5th grade. I wanted to work with children in medicine. Initially, I thought that would be as a physician, but I did have an opportunity in high school to work at an emergency hospital unit and realized that I really preferred nursing, because nursing for me was much more about who I am, the nurturer that I am. It's about caring for people, not just treating. And although that was something I was very interested in, and this is where some of that self-sabotage or other sabotage comes in, was told that I probably would not make a good nurse. And so I pushed that aside and decided, no, that's really what I wanted to do. Learned about advanced practice nursing, which at that point was relatively new, and really had my eyes set there from day one. So even in my bachelor's program, knew that that was my goal, was to get to become an advanced practice nurse. Again, another obstacle along the way in graduate school, getting my master's degree, was told by an African-American professor that I would not make a good nurse practitioner. And then again, in that same program, when working with my clinicals, was told that I would never make a good nurse practitioner working with children with cancer. And albeit both of those were sobering moments, remembered again what it was that I wanted to do, what my capabilities were, being spiritual as well, prayed about that, looked for guidance, had lots of support and reinforcement from family members and friends, and graduated, despite being told again that I should not graduate at the time that I was supposed to graduate. I was told that my thesis really should just wait and happen after my courses, but by much perseverance, got that done on time, which again just helps me realize my own self-worth and my own abilities to do the things that I determined that I needed to do, and graduated, thankfully, successfully, and actually within a couple of years took a position as an advanced practice nurse working with kids with cancer, and loved it, and was much appreciated, not just by my peers and parents, but by the children themselves. And so for me, that was 100% win, because I was able to do really what I wanted to do deep in my heart and felt that I could do, and I did it very well and very successfully. So there are many barriers that are faced daily. I often tell my peers, my colleagues, I wake up every morning in the profession that I'm in with 3 barriers every day of my life. I'm female, I'm Black, and I don't have the initials MD behind my name. So because of where I work and the expectations and the hierarchy that exists, those barriers smack me in the face every morning when I open my eyes. So I continue to pursue to be who I am and my truth and my passion towards children, particularly underserved children. And it doesn't really matter what those barriers are, because that to me is my passion. And There are days that are harder than others. There are many, 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 many days where my voice is not heard. But I continue to push forward because of who I am and, more importantly, of what I believe in. So for me, taking care of those children and letting those children know the possibilities that are there for them, being in an underserved community, often having many, many more barriers than I have ever had or could ever imagine, that I can push through those small barriers for me, because what's more important is that those kids get the things that they need and deserve. I was fortunate to have an opportunity to change from my being a pediatric nurse practitioner in hematology oncology, working with children with cancer, to we were starting something new here in the city in school-based health. And we were opening a couple of centers through Cincinnati Children's. And it sounded like something, again, that I was really interested in. There were some personal reasons. It worked more, it better aligned in my personal life so I could spend time with my children, not as long hours. And sought the opportunity. I really had to fight for it, actually, because I was kind of told, even though I was a minority woman, and there were no other minority candidates for that position working in the inner city of Avondale, but that why I would be good at that because I hadn't been doing that. And I'm like, well, I haven't had an opportunity to do that because the opportunity hasn't existed. But I'm pretty sure if you give me the opportunity, I'll make it worth your while. And that truly was the best thing that I could have ever done. To be able to touch young lives, period, is amazing. But to touch them and to see them blossom and to see them grow, and that was, oh my goodness, almost 20 years ago. So my now kids who are grown, who come back and see me at those schools with their children and hear myself in them and hear the things that we as a team shared with them and encouraged them to do, and now you see it in them, and not only them and in their children, 100% know that that was the right choice for me, and that truly is my passion and where I'm meant to be. I mean, I think being a woman, we are phenomenal, and we can do any and all things. Our society often makes that more difficult. Being a Black woman is another layer, and it always feels that we have to go 400+% above at all times, while we carry all the other burdens of life on our shoulders as well. I would say, first and foremost, know yourself. Know what it is that you want, because you have to believe in yourself, because along the way, many people will not believe in you and will not help to pick you up. So then secondly, find your support team. They can be people close to you or not so close to you, but you need to know who those support people are, because you're going to need them. And it's fine to use them. We all need each other. And without that support team, it's going to be extra hard. Not that you still can't do it, but there's going to be days where you're really going to need somebody to help lift you up, and vice versa. And then self-care. I think we, particularly as Black women, do carry so many things and carry them well that we forget to stop and take care of ourselves. So remember that you can only do the things that you want to do and help others and do other things if you're taking care of yourself. And that's hard to step back and do that often, but it's hugely, hugely important. So take those moments, and they may literally be moments, but take them, reflect on yourself, be your spiritual self, and really remember who you are, your worth, and that any and all things are possible.
Imposter syndrome, in my opinion, is one of the most destructive things that we can do as women to ourselves, but I think it happens. It just happens where we have a lot of self-doubt, maybe lack of confidence in an area. I'm not good enough. Should I really be here? If they find out, what will happen? And I think that's just, we're in our own heads way too much. And it's very destructive, because I think it keeps us away from exploring new opportunities. That fear that we're not good enough, or we're not what our resume really says. And so, one way that I have, because it has happened to me, I'm not gonna lie, I try to pour into me. as much as I can. Positive reinforcement, like, girl, you got this. You can do this. Affirming statements to myself. Go in here, you're strong, you're a child of the Most High. And I try to go in like that. And of course, my village continues to pour into me. But sometimes your village is not around all the time. And so we have to make sure that we are speaking life into our own situations and to ourselves. And that's one way that I feel that I have, I want to say overcome, but just a strategy that I have used to, when those things start coming in, like, whoa, I got this, girl. You're a bad Black woman. You can do this. So those are the things that I do for myself when I feel those kind of negative thoughts coming in and creeping in that are very destructive to women. Let me tell you a quick funny story about how I really got to where I am. Now, a lot of people who know me know that I've been at the University of Cincinnati for a very long time. I've had every position in the Office of Ethnic Programs and Services at UC. But there's this one story that I remember. I think I may have been a junior or senior in college and, was looking for this job. I just needed to make some money on the side. Like, I'm in school, I'm in college. And I had applied for a position that was like a customer service position for a well-known company. And I went to the corporate headquarters and I took the typing test and these kind of questions to see how you do with customer service. And so a week or so later, my dad, I was living at home. My dad brought the mail in. My mom, we were in the kitchen, and I opened this letter. Dad hands me this letter, and he says, "What is this?" And I said, I applied for this job. I think this is, my letter. And it was unfortunately, you were not selected. And that, like at 20, 21, tore me down. I normally, just based on Brandy, I don't get those type of letters, And so when I got that, whoa, it crushed me. And I know my eyes swelled up. And my dad looked at me. He said, "Let me see the letter." So he read the letter. He said, "Are you getting bent out of shape over this?" And I was like, "Daddy, they told me I wasn't qualified for customer service." And he was like, my mom looked at me, of course, she just really matter of fact, like, "Girl, give me a break." But my dad, he was that one that would just say these things that I know I needed to hear. He looked at me. He said, "You're bigger than this. You're bigger than this position. You're bigger than this job. You could wake up one day and own that company." And I was like, he knew exactly what to say. Couple days later, I go on campus. I see Dr. Abercrombie. He is talking about a grad assistant position in the office. He's like, "You'd be great." There we go. Open the door. I was not supposed to get that. But it did allow me that opportunity to say, I wasn't supposed to get that for a reason. And like my dad said, it wasn't this arrogant piece. It was, you're bigger than that. That's not even what you're going to school for. He had some choice words, but like, let that go and let's move on to the greater, to the better. And so that led me into, truthfully, student affairs. I didn't graduate from high school or college saying, "Oh, I want to be a student affairs practitioner." But that's just where I was supposed to be. And that's where I was supposed to minister. And that was the turning point. Being denied something opened the door for greatness. A few barriers that I have faced is what we talked about in the beginning. That self-sabotage, that imposter syndrome. Am I good enough for this? Am I ready for this? I'm not going to lie and say that I haven't had some challenges sometimes with women that look like me, I believe that we can all be great together, and there's going to be opportunities that you and I might go for at the same time. But, we're going to pull up our stuff and we're going to go for it and see what happens. So, you know, I've had to deal with just challenges sometimes from other women. But, you know, I don't hold on to that. I go into it saying, hey, I'm going to give my best product and we'll see what happens. And if I was meant for this, then it's meant to be. And if not, then we move on. But really, I want to say one barrier for me has been the lack of true mentorship, truthfully. You know, we keep reaching and we keep growing. And as we grow, I feel like we need those leaders and those elders to continue to stay with us and continue to help guide and navigate. And sometimes it's been hard for me to find those champions that I could really, that can really help me navigate these spaces that are sometimes uncomfortable. So I would say, you know, those are some of the risks and barriers that have happened. And the one last thing that I know for me has been a barrier is being a risk taker. I think sometimes for me, I've gotten comfortable. And I think sometimes as us, we get comfortable. And sometimes the greatest opportunity is right outside of those doors. And we don't know. I remember one mentor told me, I said, we were talking about careers and just growing. And she said, you know, sweetheart, everyone sometimes says that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. But she said, what if it is? What if it's better? What if the thing that you're scared of is not a challenge at all? So stop the negative doubt, all of that, and just try, jump, take the ball, shoot it. You don't know what's on the other side because you haven't been there. So stop letting fear and doubt overcome your thoughts. Take the risk, jump, you'll still land. And so overcoming a lot of those things have helped me along the way. And I'm still growing. I don't know all the answers, and I still need my village to pour into me. But those are just some things that I know that have stopped my progress, or at least halted it for a minute. Is, again, in my own head, causing those things to like penetrate. And it's like, whoa, no, stop, take the risk, shoot the ball. I don't know if there was a particular time where I said, whoa, you know, but as I reflect in my 40-something years of life, I look at my career trajectory and I know it's where God has wanted me to be, because I don't need a supervisor saying, great job. I don't need that. What gives me joy is to know that I've poured into students. I have helped them along the way. I provide scholarships where they can go to college and stay in college for 4 years, and they get a book stipend. And so I don't need all the accolades, but when students say thank you, I know I'm doing what I'm doing. And I know what I'm doing is for a purpose bigger than me, that I can work on a college setting and work with 18 to 22-year-olds, seeing them apply for jobs, getting positions, leaving Cincinnati, moving across the country, you know, becoming doctors and lawyers and teachers and nurses and engineers, just to see the students that I at least got to, you know, have a little piece of their life for a short amount of time has brought me joy. And that's when I knew, like, there's no other occupation that I would rather be in than being in education and working with students. I'm a life learner, and so I learn from them, we learn from each other. And so I lead from the center. You know, I want to be with the folks that I'm with, and we grow together. So honestly, it's something that I have just experienced, where I feel like this particular, why I'm here today, to just drop a little knowledge. There is one word that I don't think any of us wants to hear, and that's no. No, you cannot. No, you did not. Unfortunately, no, right? A no to many people equates to failure. You know, or I didn't make it, I wasn't good enough. Opportunities will come and we might get some and we might not, right? So how do you not fall apart when you get a no? Especially when you prepared. You know, my dad used to say, when preparation meets opportunity. When you've prepared, when you've given it your all, when you've been 100% ready for this opportunity, and then you get the no. How do you bounce back? We have to pay attention to the spiritual aspect of what the no could represent. The no could be not now. I said this in a conversation a week ago. There are tool sharpening moments. Some things, some people that we need to meet along the way, some opportunities or experiences that help sharpen our tools. When my dad said earlier that company, you're bigger than that has never left my spirit. I'm not saying that again in a vain or egotistical way. I'm saying a no could just be not right now, because God is in charge, number one. So if we understand that God is in control, then again, we should have several seats, right? But the no could be the preparation for what's next. And so if we could take the no and continue to work on us, and I believe in something for me called my own personal board of directors. And I would encourage all women to get a board of directors for themselves. So what does that mean? I have key people in my life that I can go to for certain things. If I need a pep talk, I know who to go to. If I need somebody to give it to me raw and say, here are some things that you really need to work on, and understanding that I can take it, I can handle it. If I need a cheerleader, I know who to go to. If I need someone to pour into me spiritually, I know who to go to. And that might be a good 3 to 5 people who know their purpose on my board. So I encourage us to have those. You can call them village keepers, you can call it your board of directors, whoever they are, that they serve a purpose. My no is not a no. It is, you don't know what God has planned for the next. So while I'm in that no, in that process of that no, continue perfecting, continue to grow, and watch what's going to happen next. You're bigger than that.
I think that as Black women, especially once we enter the workforce, we are always seen differently than our counterparts. Most times as angry Black women, being too aggressive, being too assertive. And in order to put us in our place, we are given tags and names and put in different situations to make us reevaluate ourselves. For example, I worked for a corporate organization here in Cincinnati, Ohio at one point, and I was trying to get a promotion and a raise. I was a single parent at the time, and I just needed more money to take care of my family. And I was working really hard to impress the powers that be, who did not look like me. And basically, I was brought into an office and sat down across from both of them and told that I had poor communication skills, that I did not understand the business well enough to be asking for a raise, and essentially that I did not deserve it. At that point in time, I was brought to tears, literally in front of them. And I swore at that moment I would never find myself in that position again. But as a woman, as a mom, as a human being, that situation really hurt me. So I think working at that company really led me to understand that I should not be working for someone else. Humiliation is not my thing. And if I was going to be humiliated, belittled, made fun of, laughed at, ridiculed, then I was not going to work at that company anymore. I was going to step out on my own faith and become an entrepreneur. And that's exactly what I did. Well, at one point, I found myself physically ill from working at the corporate organization that I worked for. And when I mean ill, I mean my heart was palpitating and offbeat, and I had to be admitted to the hospital. Once I left the hospital, my manager actually called and said, when are you going to be back to work? Not, are you okay? How are you doing? When are you coming back? And the day that I came back, I was again brought into an office and told what a terrible job that I was doing. And I realized this is not where I'm supposed to be. This is a stepping stone to get where I need to be. And I had already, in the back of my mind, wanted to be an entrepreneur anyway. So I just took the steps needed. I emptied out my 401k plan. I wanted to work in an area that I could see growth. And I love children, and I love working with children, and I love seeing them grow and learn. And so I decided to open my first childcare center. It was long and it was hard. I didn't have the resources that I needed. I didn't have the expertise that I needed. I didn't know a thing about childcare, but I knew that this is what I wanted to do, and it was going to take the same hard work and dedication that I put into someone else's business to start my own, and that's exactly what I did. So most of the barriers that I faced, I feel, were other people. Like I said, there are other people that don't look like us that make us feel unworthy. So has there ever been a time in your life where you find yourself in a situation where no matter how hard you're working and no matter how much effort you're putting forth, it's just not enough? You can just never do enough. Well, I found myself in similar places, really backed up into a corner where I feel like I had to fight myself out. I felt like I needed to stand up for myself, speak up, and, rise up out of whatever they were trying to bury me under in order just to stand firm on my feet and to move forward and, to be successful with what I wanted to do in my life. And so every time I found myself in that situation, whether it was in corporate America or even now as an entrepreneur, I found myself sitting in rooms where people feel that they are more important than me, that they know more than me, that, they deserve to be there and I don't. So no matter what happens, whether it's in the boardroom, in a conference room, or just over the phone, I always want to exude my leadership, capabilities and let people know that I deserve to be here. I deserve a seat at this table. And if I can't sit at your table, then I am willing to make one for myself. So there's always moments every day when you work in childcare because you get to see children do things every single day. It could be something as simple as a baby learning to walk. It just makes me so excited to know that it's because of me being there, me encouraging them, and me creating an environment for them to thrive in that they're able to do things like that, or going to the potty, or learning to read, or any type of milestone that they have. I feel like I'm a part of that, and that excites me on a daily basis. So the first thing is be resilient. You're going to fall down a lot, and it doesn't matter how many times you fall down. What matters is how many times you get back up. The second thing is be flexible because you're going to encounter many different things, and you're going to have to learn how to move within the ramifications that you're given. You're going to have to learn how to work with whatever you're given. So you're going to have to be flexible to accommodate that. And lastly, I would say it's going to be hard, but it will always be worth it. So always count on yourself first.
I think all of us have a level of self-doubt. I think that's natural, but some of us let it get to us to the point where we can't accomplish what we are put here on this earth to do. And so until we realize that we have inherent talents and we've been training all our lives, or we put effort into learning a particular skill, once we realize that, then we can actually live in our purpose. So it's very important, or you'll never succeed at what you were destined to do. The turning point for me is when I wanted to give up. I felt like I am one of the few Black people in this position. I felt like no one has my back. No one is here for me. Why was I put in this situation? This is a conversation I had with myself and God many times. Why am I here? I want to go back to what's comfortable, what I'm used to. And until I realized I couldn't do that, one, because I'm in a contract, but two, because there must be some higher purpose. That's what helped me overcome it, to realize I have to be here for a reason. What is it? And to start seeking what that reason was. I decided to get into alignment after having a conversation with my friend. She said, "Why did you apply?" to that position. And I had to really think about that. And I realized I was called to apply for that position. I was not seeking that particular school district. I felt God led me to apply for that district. And there were just several things that happened when I was there to help me realize why I was there. And it came from Black children, one who didn't want to participate in class and they thought she was angry. In reality, her hair wasn't done. And then another incident where a girl just kept staring at me, and finally she said, "You look like my mom, I like you." And it was a new little girl. And so just those few little incidents like that really made me realize I'm here so children can be comfortable and understand that there are people who look like you in these higher positions. So the district I'm in, it's a very traditional district. A lot of people live in the neighborhood, never left. A lot of people who might work in the district attended school in the district. So that's a large barrier in any neighborhood coming in as a new person. It's hard to break through. But it's also hard when your ideas may vary greatly from that particular population. So that's the main thing. With everything going on in the world, helping the nation to realize the plight of Black people. The plight is not new, but some people opening their eyes is new, and it's uncomfortable. And so that's what I'm currently working on, helping the people that I encounter in my district understand diversity and inclusion and work toward that. It's been happening a little bit each day, and I think more so now, in the past month or so, I've really come into the realization this is what I've been meant, this is what I'm here for, this is what I'm supposed to do. And it's having conversations with staff, professional development, meetings, and helping them to understand what implicit bias is, what racism is, and to open their eyes, as well as my own, to differing views and understanding that although we very different, we vary in how we feel, there has to be some medium, there has to be some ground that we can meet on to make sure our children are successful. What I would tell those women, as I had to tell myself, just take a hard look. Why am I here? What skills do I have that allow someone to put me in this position, allow me to work toward this position, and understand I'm here for a reason. And if I'm going to be here, whether I have to fake it till I make it or fake it until I believe it, I have those skills to be here and to be successful. What can I give to others? I would just say, wherever you are in whatever position you are, work hard at it. Whether it's a position you want to be in, it is definitely preparing you for the position that you're supposed to be in.
You have to speak positivity in your life every day in order to overcome those barriers. And the only thing that you can control is your own voice. So I think that's why it's so important. Wow. So I'll just say when I started realizing that how society views you as deficits were really my strengths, and that was where my power lied. So I'll just say I don't know if there was really a turning point or a set point, but I know that it became a motivating force in me just continuing to push past those barriers. And that became my purpose as well. It's just to follow what people spoke against me as my strength. So there were so many deposits throughout my life. I'll say they were in the uncomfortable moments, the challenging moments that I knew I had to keep pushing, and that there was something behind it. It was more of a test. So it's all about how you frame it and your perspective. So each one of those little moments were really tests to tell me I just need to keep fighting and pushing forward and motivating forces to overcome whatever was being spoke against me or whatever hurdles came. So there's so many. I'll say being a military kid, I'm a third culture kid. So I was born in England. I went to kindergarten, third grade in Japan. And I didn't come back to the States until like fourth grade. And so that was an adjustment in itself to me, just to come back to the States. And that was honestly the first time I ever experienced racism, is coming to the States, not overseas. And so just hearing what society pushed on you and saying what you couldn't do or could do. And then also, I'll just say, being a 6'2" woman standing out, oftentimes you feel like you have to shrink yourself down or lower your voice so that people don't feel intimidated. So those are messages that I received throughout my life. And I've been 6'2" throughout middle school and high school. So it wasn't like it just came. But yeah, just seeing how people, I guess it's that third eye, or just being aware, having that heightened awareness and that empathy of knowing what your presence brings to people around you. And sometimes it can be intimidating, but really having to learn early on that it's not about me, it's about that individual that I'm in front of, or whatever I bring. So I had to really be humble, but at the same time, still use that as my strength to keep pressing forward, because I knew that just my faith and that God had a bigger purpose and plan for me. So there are so many barriers, but I'll just say racism, being a woman, being a collegiate athlete, a former collegiate athlete. There's so many things, and that can be intimidating to some people, that what you bring with you. I feel like I'm just getting started. I just finally hit my peak, I feel, in taking my faith walk. So I'm going to say now. And I honestly, it's like a milestone, because I hit 40 and then I'm getting ready to get my PhD, and then taking that walk was a huge faith walk. So I'm going to say now, be yourself. Don't compare yourself to anybody else or your walk with anybody else's walk. Like, you have to keep being yourself. And so self-awareness is key, and identity is key, and finding who you are and what God's purpose is for your life, and take one day at a time. It's okay to fall and fail, but you just get back up again and figure out what you can learn from that, and keep moving and pressing forward. So,
when I think about imposter syndrome, I think about perfectionism and overcoming perfection, because that's a part of it, of not feeling like you're good enough, not feeling like you have all the credentials, not feeling like you can check every single box for the position. And so I've missed out on several positions because I felt like I couldn't check every single box. I had a degree or 2 or 3, and I had certifications, but I still felt like it was that one little detail that I couldn't check, and so I wouldn't apply. And I think it's very important for today's career-driven professional, today's woman, especially today's African-American women, to be able to overcome those issues and apply. We need more leaders. We need more women in the C-suite, especially African-American leaders. We need women that step outside of their comfort zone and really be able to take on their careers and really feel empowered to do so. So overcoming imposter syndrome, although people don't talk about it, I think it is important that we do, and we encourage the next generation to feel like that they too can go on and apply for positions that they may not be able to check every box, and give them that confidence that they need. The turning point for me is there was an opportunity that came up, and like I said about checking every box, I couldn't check every box. Luckily for me, I had a mentor, and she said, I really think you would be awesome for this position. And I'm like, I don't know if this is for me. The opportunity seemed like it was a great one. I could check off like 5 of the 8 boxes. And she said, you really should apply for that position. And I did, and I interviewed for it. And what I realized is that the people that were at the table that had the power to make the decision on whether to hire me or not, they didn't know that they needed me until I got to the table. They didn't know that I had skills that they needed until I showed up. And so what it taught me is that sometimes those decision makers, those businesses, those HR professionals, they don't know they need you until you're at the table, able to tell them what you can bring to the table, the different experiences that you have. And it's not just about those degrees, certification. It's about those other things. I was able to bring relationships, and that was huge in a new role. So that was a turning point for me to apply for positions, even though you can't check every box. And when I look at my colleagues, they do it all the time. So that's a great question. Getting in alignment, definitely, I'm a woman of faith, so definitely staying centered and grounded in my faith. I surrounded myself with mentors and coaches that would help me be able to see what I couldn't see in myself. So really being able to put myself in positions in which I was not comfortable. I always say, dear fear, you can't have my legacy, you can't have my life, and fear will hold you back. And I just wanted to, I know that I'm here to change the world. I know I'm here to be a voice for the voiceless. And I can't do that if I'm quiet. I can't do that if I'm on mute. I can't do that if I'm on pause. So, that was important for me in order to be able to inspire and empower the next generation of leaders. Barriers, tons of barriers. So by background, I'm a medical laboratory professional. I work in the clinical laboratory, and in my industry, there are not a lot of people that look like me in leadership roles. So I've been in that profession for over 16 years now. And most times I am the only African American at the table. And so that's a barrier all within itself of even being able to get to the table, being able to represent for the rest of my colleagues in a manager role. And so even knowing there's a lot of conversations that happen outside of the meeting space, outside of the boardroom, and even knowing that those conversations are taking place. So having a mentor, I would tell anybody, having a mentor is a non-negotiable. It is a requirement for you because you need somebody who's already been there, somebody who can shorten that learning curve for you, somebody who can open up some doors and leverage their influence and access for you. And so that was really the turning point for me of having some women to reach back and pull me forward so that I can get at the table and feel confident and able to speak up and use my voice while I'm at the table being a minority. I realized I was doing what I was meant to do as I grew up as a young girl. Like I told you before, I always knew I would change the world. And now that I'm able to coach and mentor other leaders and being able to hear their successes, that's what really makes me know that I'm doing what I was called to do. Being able to see those young leaders have confidence and feel fearless and be able to lead and apply for positions. So mine more so is seeing it through the eyes of other people. I have a young daughter. My daughter's 18 months old. And if I can show her that it doesn't matter if nobody else has done it before that look like you, that's okay. You can be that person. And so that's what it's all about for me. So women out there, if you are struggling to live in your purpose, one, you need clarity. You absolutely need clarity and focus on what it is that you feel you are called to do. Whatever you feel is success for you, define success for yourself. If not, somebody will define it for you. Define it for yourself and what it looks like. And if I could give leaders 3 practical tips, I would say the first tip would be is create your leadership or career roadmap. You got to know where you want to go. You got to map it out how you want to get there. And when you do that, it allows you to know what people you need on your path, what experience you need on your path, what degrees you may need on your path, what education you might need, volunteer experience you might need. And if you know that in advance, you can start working on those things without getting degrees that doesn't even matter for where you're trying to go to. The second tip that I would give would be to surround yourself with people who are a little bit further along in their journey than you are. Greatness attracts greatness. And it reminds me of this story of a guy, he entered his mule in the Kentucky Derby. I went to school in Kentucky, so I chuckle when I say this. And so it's all about the horses, the fast cars. And he entered his mule into the Kentucky Derby and they laughed at him. They were like, why would you do that? He doesn't stand a chance. And so when he entered the mule, of course, he was disqualified and rebuked. And he said, well, I entered him in with all of these thoroughbreds because I felt like that he could benefit from being associated with all of these winners. And so that, if we look at our life like that, we can benefit from being associated with people that are a little bit further than us. People who are, at some point, I don't want to say better than we are, but maybe they're better than we are at that task at that particular moment. And so they pull us up. When people think a certain way and think higher, they bring people up versus surrounding yourself with people that think small. And the last tip that I would say is, it reminds me of the law of process that says leadership develops daily, not in a day. So you have to invest in lifelong learning. So continue to learn every day so that you can get better and better and better. It's like investing in the stock market. In order to get better, you got to invest, you got to play. And that's the same thing in regards to your leadership and your personal growth and development. So those would be the things that I would tell people to get better and better, and they will be able to do whatever it is that they are called and want to do.
Just in the work that I'm in specifically, people are showing up in a way that they don't always feel like they can be their true selves. I work in the criminal legal space, and as a result, most people who are in the space I'm in have had some kind of interaction with the law, and they just feel like there's a stigma attached to that. And so as a result, being in spaces where we are talking about advocacy or access to education, people oftentimes feel intimidated and feel like their voices aren't valued. And it's really important to understand that actually their voices should be the ones that are leading the way. And so I think that when we talk about that self-sabotaging behavior, I think that it plays into how people see themselves and how they perceive other people seeing them, when oftentimes people don't actually view them that way. So I was actually a social worker for 20 years, and it was a result of my own involvement in the criminal legal system that I got into the work that I'm currently in. So it's interesting. I always tell people it's interesting for me how God has worked in my life, because I would have never thought that I would be an advocate and someone that is working with organizations to really fight to dismantle some of the injustices that we see in our country currently. So I think my own lived experience was the pivotal point that really launched me into my purpose, which is to really support people who are impacted by the criminal legal system and to remove a lot of the barriers that people face as a result. Yeah, absolutely. So as I shared it, it was my lived experiences. So I actually was involved in the criminal legal system as it relates to being incarcerated, having to go through the reentry process. And it was really through my interaction with people, understanding that the people who were in the system were mothers, were fathers, were, sons and daughters, and that they didn't really have a voice. And oftentimes I feel like what led to incarceration was situational. So it was due to poverty, it was due to lack of resources. And so as a result of that, I really understood that I had a platform and a voice that I could actually be that person to speak for people who may not have the opportunity to speak in different spaces. And so that lived experience, being incarcerated with women who when I say situations, they may have been in a relationship with someone, and as a result of that relationship, they were incarcerated as well and removed, and now their children are in social services. So we're talking about like various systemic issues that are going on. And so going through that experience and interacting with those people that I came across just in that journey is really what launched me into the advocacy space, and to really be able to be a voice for the women that are still inside. So I would say when I think about barriers, I tell people all the time I was very fortunate. My parents were first generation college students. So college was kind of this, like, you're going to go to college. So for me, college, I won't say it was easy, but I had access, right? I had access that a lot of people didn't have. It really came later in life. So here I am 40 and I'm dealing with drama as it relates to what I just shared as far as with the criminal legal stuff. So I think that for me, one of the biggest barriers was actually hearing no. So for so long in my life, I interviewed for jobs, and I worked in spaces and I was told yes. And after that experience, I had to learn how to hear no. I had to understand what collateral consequences really look like. And I had to understand that having a criminal record really does change the dynamics of a person's life. And so that for me was probably one of my biggest barriers and obstacles that I had to overcome, was really understanding what the impact was of that conviction. So I would say my aha moment was in 2019. I was working at another organization, and I loved the organization, but I just felt like I needed to be doing something more. And I met these amazing women based in Louisiana who ran a nonprofit for women. And they basically were like, we will support you in your mission and your vision, go do it. And so I did it. I decided to resign my position and to really just launch both my for-profit and nonprofit on a full-time basis. So I started accruing different contracts, working with different people all over the country, and it has led me to where I am now. So just really, I feel really fortunate that that I was able to do that. And so my goal is to, to model that for other people as well. Well, I would start with just saying, like, don't be hard on yourself, right? We realize, and I'm going to speak as a Black woman, that there are some barriers and obstacles that come in our path that we just don't have control over. But it's really important to really take time to reflect on who you are, what your goals and aspirations are, but then also start aligning yourself with the people and the places and the things that you feel are aligned with your purpose. I think that it's important for us to not only be responsible in our own space, but also be self-reflective and to get feedback from people. So that means really surrounding ourselves with people who are pouring into us. And I think that connecting with resources and services that will support whatever, endeavor a person may want to go through. And just understanding that we all have had rough patches in our lives and that you can get through it. It's just about believing in yourself and also aligning yourself with people who will encourage you and support you in that journey.
We have been sabotaged way too long, and it is time for us to get out of that. We were never made to be second-class citizens, for lack of better words, to be second-class citizens. We are more magnificent than we think, and once we push past the fear, then we are greater than we thought. Well, I was pushed into purpose. It was never a conversation with myself or a decision where I was like, oh, I would love to be an entrepreneur. That was never it. God had a different plan for me, and it was Him directing my path. And once I decided to go ahead and quit fighting, it became easier. But it's almost like I was left with no decision. My job had ended. I have a master's degree in education. I was a department chair at a local college, and the job was ending. And I'm like, now what? And everyone had always asked me, like, you should start a childcare. I'm like, I don't want to do that. That's way too hard. That's not for me. That's not grand enough. That was my pride. I really thought so. Not for a master's degree. That's how I felt. But God had a different plan. And once I really listened to Him and start, allowing Him to be the CEO of the organization, then it all came into play. After being in business the first 3 years, I was able to expand from 1,200 to 5,000 square feet, where our mission is to teach children how to pray and how to actually fight early so that they will not be overcome by their adulthood. My own childhood brought me to this. And so I always wanted to create a safe space for other children. I didn't have a traditional upbringing, as some would say. We were very impoverished. I'm the oldest of 10. I'm a big sister. And unfortunately, my parents wasn't the traditional parents. And so I ended up being the nurturer very early and having to make adult decisions very early. And I've never felt as though I had a adult that I can go to just spill on, just to let them know, hey, this is not normal. I know this isn't normal. You know what I mean? So I wanted to be that safe place, and I have been able to create that safe place. It's not strange to me that I have children who have some challenges, and I'm just very grateful that they trust me enough to tell me, their concerns and want me to intercede for them in prayer or teach them how to tap in. I find that to be amazing, and I'm just glad to be in that. I'm so thankful that He chose me to do that. Well, something that always sticks out to me, I remember after receiving my master's degree and going back to the 2-year school that I had graduated from, and being told by a superior person that I'm not a statistic. Oh, you're not a statistic, I see. That hurt. But it also motivated me to even be better, you know. And I thought, like, statistic, wow, you know, that's what you thought of me? But apparently so. And so I had this drive to just prove them wrong. And not just prove them wrong, but to prove to myself, because I had to fight that little girl voice inside that I wasn't good enough. You know, you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not strong enough. You'll never make it out here. I had to fight past all of that and say, I am more than enough. You know, he that is in me is greater than he that is in the world. And I live by that. Yeah. I actually came to that place not too long ago. I'm still there. I'm still in that place. Well, you know, God deals with me in different ways. But it came to me when I realized that the staff that I was hiring was also to be ministered to, and also be that they too needed healing. So in that, I was like, wow, so here I am. This is big. And I'm not only here for the families. I have staff I have to help. I have the community I have to help. Oh, wow, this is so big. But I think at that moment is when I realized, when I feel like it's bigger than me, it's supposed to be, because it's not supposed to be me doing it. I am just a vessel. And so that's how I knew I was in that perfect place. I would tell them that it's okay, that anything worth fighting for, you have to push through the fear, and you're going to be scared. And it's okay to be scared, but do it scared. Do it scared. It's no reason, you know, you just have to. Anything worth fighting for, you have to do it scared. On the other side of fear is everything that you want, everything. And so, you know, and I do it scared every day. And every day is something more challenging for me to do. But I've learned it gets easier. And I might get butterflies, but it's okay. It's okay.
The most important thing is to recognize it. To be transparent, I did not recognize it until probably 2 or 3 years ago. And it was evident to me that it was a part of me. So I had to really dive down and kind of figure out what that was, what the symptoms were, and really how to overcome that. I think it really reflects and impacts negatively when you don't actually understand what it is, because that can stop your growth. So really just recognizing and understanding it, I think that is very, very important, because you're more than that. So just to really overcome the mental capacity of the negative impact of self-sabotage is very, very important. Yeah, so I had a vision of getting, well, to back up, I've always been just the one nurse or the one nurse practitioner in the organization, or two of us. Never really got connected with all of us. So my vision was to get all of us together in order to really just know each other. So I wanted to do a photo shoot, and at that time they were like, okay, after that, what's next? I did not have a vision. So it just turned into an organization where we are all together now, not trying to find other people as well. So we now have at least 50 Black MPs that know each other throughout the city, which is very, very magnificent. I think that it gives us a place where we can be transparent, that we can embrace each other and uplift each other. To go back, I am a CPS graduate, so graduated from Hughes. And through that program, they had a health program. So I was very intrigued in that alignment with that program. Throughout that program, I was exposed to different career paths. And through that time, just got exposed in different experiences. And then it became of an interest. So with nursing throughout the path, it has taken me on a bunch of different rides. But I think that making that direct impact, changing health outcomes, having those patients tell me, hey, you know, you've made a difference in my life, or telling me that, you know, I've changed my outcomes. I'm now a part of my healthcare, or just to get them to stop smoking. You know, just those simple things that I can do as a nurse practitioner is very, very crucial. And I think that, you know, once we can get all the patients involved in their healthcare, health outcomes will change. Yeah, absolutely. So I am not a great test taker. And during that time, after you graduate, you have to pass a test, so the NCLEX. I failed it the first and second time. That was very, very a life kind of changing event for me, because I felt like, you know, this is my purpose. So why is this test getting in the way of my purpose? But, you know, through different, you know, test taking classes, I was able to pass on the third time. And also different barriers, again, being the only one. There was discrimination where you walked in the door and they thought that you were housekeeping instead of a nurse. You had to prove yourself in order to really take care of the patients that you were, you know, governed to do. Also, you know, just being a part of mostly non-Black community, you know, how do you navigate your way through and still be the person that you were, you know, destined to be? Those are all still barriers that I face, unfortunately. But it also gives me a little bit more push to just be me. So at the end of the day, you know, the patients actually admire what they see, how we talk, how we interact, because that's how they relate. Yeah. So direct impact. I think that when you get to a place where you see health outcomes change, when you get to a place where patients are actually coming back and only wanting you, getting to a place where, you know, people are reaching out saying, hey, you inspire me. So all of those places that will continue to push me to be better so I can bring other people and uplift other people along is key. I didn't get here by myself. There are a lot of hands and shoulders that have brought me along the way as well. I call them my advisory board, that I don't know where I would be without them. So I definitely just want to give back. Yeah, take a risk. The worst anyone can say is no. I just was having a conversation with someone and the worst they can say is no. So I feel as though that why not take a risk? It's life. You either win or you get wiser. So it's never to the point where there's not a negative in the situation. You always look for the positive. So again, if you don't win today, try again tomorrow. Because again, there's a purpose in everyone. So you really just have to find it. And also making sure the people around you are aligned with your mission and vision and value as well. I think that's very, very important to align yourself with people that are like-minded in that direction of just uplifting and just being better.
Oh, it's extremely important because Black women have so much to offer to the world. I mean, when I look around and I see so many of my different colleagues that are Black women that are making a big difference in my research space, which is addiction. And I mean, they have so many dope studies and just different ways of looking at research problems and our unique experiences. They just make a huge difference in the research world, the health world. So we have to overcome our fears so that we can push forward and make the contributions that I know that we can make. I see it every day. So I actually have just family history of people that I've known that have unfortunately either have passed away or have, you know, suffered from addiction in some way. And so that really got me kind of wanting to know more about the space and really looking at treatment and ways in which I could, you know, help and make sure that people are not, you know, dying or suffering around me, and especially Black people, because I noticed when I went to the research and even as a student looking at, you know, working with different people, that when I look at the research, I didn't see people that look like us, and I didn't really hear our experiences being reflected in the studies. And so I knew at that point, like, okay, I need to be involved in this, and I want to be a part of the solution. So I enjoy teaching, and I also enjoy research, and I knew in order to do both of those things that I would have to pursue a PhD. But it actually kind of speaks to the self-sabotage, because when I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, I knew that eventually I would get the PhD, but I was like kind of talking myself out of it because I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. It seems like such a huge thing, and I don't know if I'm, What if I fail? What if I have all these like things in my mind telling me that I can't do it. But I'm excited that I decided to just keep going. And so I got my bachelor's, and I actually applied to a bunch of master's programs and one PhD program, and luckily got into the PhD program. So I was like, well, here we are. So I did it, and here I am. Yeah, so it's tough sometimes being the only one in certain spaces. I've been blessed because I do have a lot of great people around me and a lot of colleagues, especially in different states. But sometimes it is difficult to walk into meetings and people are looking at you like, do you belong here? Are you supposed to be here? Are you in the right space? That gets a little frustrating sometimes. And then, of course, I feel like I have to fight for a lot of the research and things that I'm doing just to show that, yes, I do deserve to be here and that I have a seat at the table. And not only do I have a seat at this table, but I've created my own table as well. And so, so there's challenges, but then they've also, motivated me to become even better. Yeah, I think just, talking with different people and hearing about their experiences and just being excited for them to know that the research that I'm doing, they see their experiences reflected in that, and they actually tell me, like I'm doing research on blunts, for example, and I'm having young people tell me, this is like, I've never seen anything like this, or I never knew, some health aspect of it. I didn't realize, that this is how, it might impact me. And so knowing that I can somehow kind of incorporate the real life experiences of people into science, that's what really excites me. To just do it, and do it afraid. Just jump out there and do it, because, there are people, like I always say, there's people who are doing things in a mediocre way and they still make it work. So I'm like, and here we are, we sit and we make up all these excuses in our mind about why we can't do something or why something won't work. But meanwhile, people are just doing stuff. So I'm like, you might as well jump out there and do it and put yourself out there, and, and sometimes some things will work, some things won't, but you'll never know unless you jump out there and do it. So just continue to be your best self, and, don't talk yourself out of things, and don't allow other people or situations to talk you out of your greatness.
So for me, all my life almost, I've dealt with insecurity. And I just kind of thought that's just the way it was, just being an African-American woman in a predominantly white society, right, ran country. And I just thought that was the norm. And what I didn't realize is that it impacted me on so many levels, professionally, romantically, in my friendships, because of the lack of security I felt for myself. And so through God's grace, through a multitude of other resources, He has really equipped me to see that, hallelujah, this isn't just something that I deal with, but minorities, and specifically African Americans, we're battling. And we need the right, hallelujah, I'm a Christian, so we need Jesus, and we also need the right group of people around us to encourage us and let us know this is not how we were meant to live. Hallelujah, we're not subservient in any way, and we deserve God's best. We're kingdom kids. So that's why it's important. It's a multitude of things. I actually was pre-med and got to medical school, and then I couldn't afford to go. And so the PhD, I don't publicly say this, but this was definitely not my plan. This was God's plan. I was going to be an MD. Yeah. And I remember long ago the Lord saying, but you're going to teach and you're going to minister. I was like, I'm going to do clinical work. And so I got into graduate school, and there were also, in terms of my research agenda, I had a very close family member of mine who was diagnosed with a very severe mental health condition. And so that, coupled then with my own diagnosis of anxiety and just emotional hurts, we talked about insecurity and imposter syndrome. It was an aha moment for me, in that I realized that God wanted me to do something more. First, dealing with myself. Mm-hmm. You can't really bless others until God deals with you. Amen. It first hits you. And so through those series of turning points, I realized that He had put a purpose in me to work with you, specifically African American youth, to build them up emotionally and spiritually. I think, and I'm going out on a limb here, there are so many talented people, especially in the African American community, especially in the African American female community. And I think one of the barriers that we, and I speak for me personally, but I think if we could have a consensus and we could yell, even though this is an interview and everyone has to be quiet in the room, that people would say that we as sisters haven't really had a sister mentality and sistership and embraced one another. So not only are you dealing with the masses of white supremacy or being the only woman of color in the room, but when there are other women of color in the room, and then you're dealing with, who is she? How do I compare? Then you go back to that imposter syndrome, and I do believe that that's rooted in slavery because we were taught to hate ourselves. And so those are some things that I will say I personally have had to check and to make sure that when I walk into a room, hallelujah, that I bring love, that I'm saying, hey, I'm happy to be here with you. I want to do it together. We're not going to one up, we're going to get it together. And so those are some additional barriers that I faced, and I believe God has helped me to, through facing it, say, hey, this is how you meet it and overcome it. You know, it's been a series of aha moments, you know, and some of them have been, you know, quite recent. So I talked about my diagnosis with anxiety and then some of my own emotional hurts. And I don't know if you all are familiar with, it's a group of psychologists, Kay and I want to say Mike Malkovich, if I'm pronouncing their names right, but they talk about how we love. And so it's not so much your personality, but it's a love style. So you can be a victim, you can be a vacillator, you can be a controller, you can be a pleaser. And a lot of it is rooted in our upbringing. And so from my own personal experiences and with working with the youth, I've been able to see from mental health conditions to familial upbringing to genetics to social factors, how all of this impacts how we see ourselves. And as of late, God has really been dealing with me on how I see myself. And some of that is not always been as a victor, but as a victim. And so as he's equipped me with the skill sets that I've needed to learn how to stand and be who he has called me to be, it's been a desire and a purpose to do kingdom work so that my research aligns with working with African-American youth to do the same thing, whether it's for focusing on a mental health condition or just focusing on mental health concerns, whether it's insecurity or feeling as if no one likes me, whatever it is, or like I can't speak in public because no one hears me. These, again, go back to familial upbringing, like on how we were taught. And so since God has been reckoning and making that true in my life, I'm able to then go back and serve. And it is so fulfilling. I love it. You know, he was so right not to let me into medical school. He knew what he was doing. So that's it for me. That the Lord is the lover of your soul. So that means sometimes that when God calls purpose into being, that doesn't mean sometimes the people that we love always get to go. So sometimes it's a lonely walk. And being able to say, Lord, I trust you. You know, I was reading in Exodus, and I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but it's a season where God is speaking to the people saying, I'm going to deliver, I have a purpose, I have a plan, and it's better than this. And as God is speaking, it's getting worse. And they're telling Moses, don't say nothing else to Pharaoh, because every time you go tell him something, he starts making the work harder. And so I think about God, and as he calls me to purpose, sometimes it's been lonely. It's been times where I'm up late night and I'm crying out and I'm saying, Lord, you said this. And I'm reminded of when he does deliver. And I think the weight is him saying, can you trust me? I know what I'm doing, but if you can trust me, there's nothing that I won't give to you because I know I can trust you to stand. So that is my advice, is that sometimes the walk is lonely, but it's worth that spiritual development. Uncomfortability produces growth. So
oftentimes in the workplace, we are dealt with microaggressions. And although we try to work past those barriers, they seem to come right at us with full force. And I will give you an example. I would be working on major projects for the office. And rather than asking me the question, they would come directly to me and say, well, can you just put me on the schedule? And instead of asking me questions pertaining to the exact work and projects that I am leading, they would rather ask my colleague or set up a meeting with my colleague regarding my own projects. Cool, great, yeah, no, don't mind me. I'll just take your name and put it in the book. So I had to learn how to deal with microaggressions that may or may not be intentional. And oftentimes in the workplace, Black women face that every day. And they're often told to work in or complete projects or assignments that are completely beneath them. And every day they have to do it with a smile on their face, knowing they're so much better than that. My mother has always told me to stop crying, to always find a solution before you start the tears. And with that everyday thought going on through my head when I'm dealt with specific situations, I have to brush my shoulders off and just keep going. And my turning point occurred a few years ago, actually, when I was told that I was not able to intern for the Maryland State Legislature because I didn't have a good enough grade point average, or I didn't have enough accolades under my belt, or I wasn't a law student, or my background wasn't in public policy. This was years ago, and I had to learn how to pay for myself to go to school. And here I am, trying to get my associate's degree, being told that I'm not good enough to even apply for this program. And I recall calling my mom crying, and the words that she told me to figure out a solution before the tears start coming out is what came to mind. And before I know it, I started talking to different legislators, introducing myself, pushing past the law students, the interns, the employees to introduce myself because I will not be ignored and I will not be silenced. So I learned to be pleasantly persistent, and that as Black women, we don't have to take anything from anyone. And I learned not to take crap from anyone. So I learned how to be pleasantly persistent throughout life and to do it with humility and with confidence, because at the end of the day, I don't have to serve anyone but God. So they can't tell me otherwise. I love helping people. That is one of my true passions, helping people. I knew I couldn't be a nurse because the sight of blood and like poo just makes me gag. It's not for everyone. So I had to figure out a different career path to help people. So I wanted to get involved in public service because I learned that if I wanted to see change happen, I had to get involved and learn how to change the laws to better everybody. And I had the opportunity of spearheading the natural hair legislation. And we had a great marketing, well, I don't want to say marketing, but a campaign effort in which the ordinance actually made national news. And Cincinnati was the first city to ban natural hair discrimination. So I was really happy to be a part of that. I love helping people, and criminal justice reform was a personal passion. And with the assistance of a few other parties, we were able to help over 100 people, 100 ex-offenders get their records expunged so they can have a better way of life, whether it's obtaining more employment, jobs, and housing, because that's so important. And once again, I don't like being told no. So I had to learn how to convince everyone to hop on board, whether it's convincing legislators to sign on to the natural hair and voting in support of it, or ensuring that we had enough volunteers in marketing to have this wildly successful expungement clinic. And most recently, I wanted to make a difference before I left my position. And I knew that I had to really just put my stamp on it. So I was able to, I spearheaded and created a statistical data report pertaining to human services funding and how it impacted African Americans. And this was for the Equity, Youth, Inclusion, and the Arts Committee at City Hall. And this report actually, it was amazing. It provided data analysis pertaining to the African American demographic in Cincinnati, and we dissected it by employment, employers, board members, clients, and etc. And we wanted to really look at who was benefiting from these nonprofits and services. And we found that, and we concluded actually that many boards don't have enough diversity. So the United Way, who actually, they facilitate and they are the segue for the human services funding, they made it a criteria going forward that these boards must have and maintain a specific diversity number. And they must show that they have diversity in their boards and that their employers also represent the clients that they serve, which is the African American community. And they said, all right, great, I'm glad. You know, my work here is done. Just kidding. But it was a really good feeling just to see that change happening and knowing that many people will benefit going forward. Oh, racism. And, you know, being younger, as a kid, I used to think, oh, well, when I'm an adult, racism is going to go away. It's going to be fine. I wouldn't have to deal with anything because we're going to basically be the United Nations growing up. And that was not the case. So racism was a barrier, sexism, dealing with sexual harassment, and being told that you're not good enough, or having to fight against those who look at your credentials and determine whether you're good enough to even be in the same space. And every day I feel like as a Black woman that I have to keep fighting to be seen and not heard, and going against the stereotypes that people put on us. And oftentimes I know women face that every day in the workplace. And we have to remind ourselves of those stereotypes so that we have to, in order for us to continue with our job. And that's really frustrating. And it can be a little tiring. And I'm sure a lot of Black women can relate to that. Working in public administration, working in politics, I realized that I do have a voice and people do listen. And I love working with the community. And being behind the scenes is where I get the most work and I see the most action happening. And I realized that I love this. I love helping people. I love being the person that organized a like a campaign, for example, with multiple parties, and working for this one legislator to make sure that we have these controversial bills passed. It's truly been a blessing, and I love what I do. I wish I made more money, but I love what I do. I will tell them to stop, and before you do anything, listen to what God has to say, first and foremost, because we may think we know what we want to do, but that's not the case. And I could tell you, for example, I worked in finance for almost 3 years. And every day I would have my morning cry because I hated my job. And I thought about every worst case scenario that I would welcome, just so I didn't have to go in the door. And I realized I can't live like that. That is not my passion. And I recall praying and asking God for leadership and learning to have faith and to walk blindly in faith, specifically in whatever path that I face. And I tell women all the time, before you go into anything, pray about it and just listen to what God has to say, because he'll tell you, you'll get that feeling. Things will just fall into place like a perfect puzzle. And just be patient, because sometimes we see the finish line before we see the actual obstacles, or we see what we want, but not everything that glitters is gold. And it's just so much easier to be patient. And no matter what, walk in humility, because humility and grace will take you a long way.
Hi, my name is Alandis Powell, and I'd like to tell you a story. I call it Unmasking. It's really strange how 20 years has gone by and I can still remember the first and the last time he hit me. Our relationship spanned 17 years, but the abuse, it was about 10. So I had to figure out how to show up in my normal life as a normal person. So I found this really cool mask and I wore it every day. Most people would meet us, they'd see us at church or at work or just other places you would engage with us as a couple, and you would think we were great. They would talk about what a cool guy he was. And they were half right. He was my soulmate. I met him my sophomore year in college and thought I could not live without him. And on most days it was good. But then there was what those other days. Those days when this other guy has shown up, found himself addicted to crack, angry, mad. And so he decided to take it out on his soulmate, his best friend, his ride or die. He took it out on me. But that's really not what this story is about. This story is about me taking off my mask, forgiving myself. I thought every piece of my mask was gone. And then recently I found I still had a couple of pieces on. I named them regret and shame. But now I've learned how to replace them with appreciation and embracement. I have found a way to embrace every piece of my journey, every minute, every second. How could I not? There were great days. I had a daughter. Her name was Niera. She came, she lasted for just a minute. But she taught me how to find joy, how to have faith. Then I have this 21-year-old son. Without all those punches, he would never have been here. He's a great guy. So why would I regret my journey, my moments? They made them who I am. But I did realize that I was living in shame. I've always been a writer. I've written poetry all over the place, but never shared it. Most of my poetry is about my bad days, and I realized I kept it to myself because of my shame. And what I'd say to you is we're here to help each other, and helping each other means that we share our stories. We help people find their way. Do you know it takes a woman or a man 12 visits to a shelter to decide to leave? And a lot of women don't leave because they don't want to leave their pets, their cat or their dog. I was a battered woman. I never needed a shelter, and I still couldn't find a way to leave. But when it was time, it was time. So if you need help, find someone, talk to them. Know that all we need to make our life better is to just live another day. Before I end, I'd like to share a poem with you that I wrote. You'll tell that it's dated a little bit, but it's one that actually says my story. I call it Boo Boo. When I speak my truth and show no regret, you go silence and look at me with anger and fret. My truthful words hurt you. It's what the truth do. I stand on what I said. Yes, I said it, Boo Boo. You're a coward, a nut. All you do is punch. You're a sorry, nothing ass. You couldn't even play Tonk. You shower and you shave and you try to look fly, but your accents, your bullshits covers your good looks like dye. My truthful words hurt you. It's what the truth do. I stand on what I said. Yes, I said it, boo-boo. You try not to look at me in the eye that you black. You're worried. You're scared, thinking how to take it back. I smile as I see you ball up your fist. I know what's coming, but you can't imagine what's next. You can tell it's different and your frustration's on high, but there's no apology to stop this. Goodbye. I found me. You lost me. I know who I am. I know I am better and be happy I can. My soul was hurting as I was losing at hide and seek, but one day I got a glimpse. One day I got a peek of my future, my life without you. My truthful words hurt you. It's what the truth do. I remember the first hit like it was just the other day. I staggered. I fell. You had nothing to say. The day was truly the turning point, you see. My decision to stay was the day I lost me. This is the truth. It hurts. It's what the truth do. The lies were killing me. Now the truth is killing you. There was one day, though, I decided to fight back. I punched you, scratched you, you caught my hits whack. I took out a knife. I could smell all your fear. The ending was close. Bro, your ending was near. I looked in your eyes. I knew I had found my escape. Pushing in this knife was all it would take. In that moment, I also saw the great man of your past. I also saw me and knew it was time to just run fast. God's angels have freed me. It wasn't too late. The angels saved us both from a deadly fate. I look back with no regrets on the past that we made. No mistakes. With all things, time allowed the hurt to fade. My truthful words hurt you. It's what the truth do. The lies were killing me. Now the truth is killing you. Thank you. Grace and peace.